How about I turn the sound down? Hello, guys. How about we try that again? Sorry, still learning my OBS. I mute my mic before the show goes on so that you hear the music instead of me rattling around in the background. But I haven't gotten to the swing of turning my mic back on yet. But I have. So hi, guys. How you doing? I hope you're having a nice end of December weekend. This is what I was saying when you couldn't hear me. That, I'm also going to check to see how my sound is, because I did do some effects to my mic to try to reduce some of the background noise. I found the noise gate, though, was cutting me off. So if you guys hear the audio being rubbish, let me know. Otherwise, I'm just going to have a bit of a chat. And actually, I might end up doing more of these over the holiday break, because unlike most people, I'm not traveling at the holidays. I did all my traveling at the end of October, November, when I went back to the States. And so I got all of the airport stuff and the seeing the family and all that out of the way, which means that now I can just have a really relaxing, like, Christmas break. As an atheist, this isn't a big holiday for me, but as so I won't be celebrating in that way, but I will be enjoying the time off because it's been a long year. Right, so I'm looking at the chat. Nobody's complaining about the audio. And so clearly it's doing okay. I see down here a couple of things. First, Guten Morgen von Portland. Guten Tag aus Köln. Yeah, so greetings from Cologne to you. Hello, Pascal Leroux. Good to see you in the chat as well. You did a really interesting hangout on a topic I will be bringing up, which is Sargon off of Patreon, and the cascading dramas that has subsequently produced. And then we also have, who else is in here? Sacré Bleu and Jamie D. I can't talk today. I didn't practice any talking before I came on air. Jamie J says audio smiley face, so I guess that means it's good. And when I cut myself off, it was probably because I cut off my audio. He said, well, that's 16 minutes and 58 seconds sooner than Sargon. True. Absolutely true. All right, guys. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, I had a lot of things I had thought to talk about. I kind of set this up and then went, okay, it's like exercise sometimes doing hangouts. Like, I know I should do it, like it's sort of time, and I kind of feel like I should, and I just kind of block aside the time without really putting too much thought in it and just see what happens. Getting more confident doing that the more that I do YouTube. And so last night, basically, a story fell into my lap, partly because it's been happening around my head, but I've been really focused on real life work stuff. So I might not be 100% up on all this drama. But what I want to talk to you guys first about, what I thought to talk to you guys first about, is the Sargon drama, because it's a bit easier than dealing with Trump. So we'll warm our way up into the shitlord part, and then maybe a little bit about Trump, and then finally I did promise I wanted to engage with Jonah Luker's I'm Not Racist for people who haven't seen it in my audience. It's such a profound piece of work that I think it's worth spending time breaking down. And I could do this like with Kevin on a happy hour, but he's not the biggest hip hop fan, so I just thought I'd do it with you guys, because if you're around and you watch my stuff and you want to watch that, that's great. So what do we say here? Stay classy. I'll be lurking in the chat. Thank you, Pascal. All right, keep up fighting the foot. Good fight. Dun dun dun. Right. Okay. So, should I just explain also the little environment I made for you guys? Oh, wrong side. Here. See, I made this little movie. There we go. This thing down here. That is film of the fireplace where my mom's house, basically. And that was recorded while I was visiting at home for the holidays. If you see so through the flames, you might see some movement on the glass in front of it. And that is me and my mom in the kitchen getting ready for Thanksgiving dinner. So that's the movement you see. We made a fire. We started, in making stuff for the dinner. It was a very small dinner. There was only 3 of us who ate. So it was more intimate, but it was turkey and stuffing and mashed potatoes. carrots and peas and gravy and something she calls pink fluff, which it doesn't sound very appealing, but it tastes really good. Pink fluff is you take cranberries and drain them, and chopped cranberries, and you drain them and you mix them in with whipped cream or Cool Whip in the United States. Then you also put in chopped walnuts and little bitty marshmallows. And so it's a really nice balance of the tartness of the cranberry, and then you get the crunch of the cranberry, you get the smoothness of the Cool Whip, and you get the crunch of the walnuts too, and also the sponginess of the marshmallow. So texturally, can you guys tell I've been watching My Kitchen Rules for too long now? I love My Kitchen Rules from Australia. But basically like cranberry fluff. It's not pink fluff, it's cranberry fluff. It's very tasty. It's not vegan, but it is vegetarian. So go ahead and make it to taste. I just gave you the recipe. Don't put any more sugar in it. There's plenty in the Cool Whip. And I'm doing that specifically to take the piss out of the Family Guy thing. I don't know if you guys caught that reference. That's not how I pronounce Cool Whip. I'm just doing it on purpose. Yeah, so anyway, I'm babbling now. That was our Thanksgiving dinner. And so that's what you're sort of watching, is setting up to Thanksgiving dinner and the roaring, sometimes, fire that we had going in the background. Yeah. And to go from that cozy, homey feel, now we're gonna go over and talk about some shitlords. How about we do that? Okay. Background, and sorry, I have to, unlike Carl, I'm not gonna lean over. I'm getting a bit of a cold. So when you just very ladylike touch a tissue to my nose. Right. Sargon drama, then Trump fiasco. How about we do it like that? Sargon, Carl is such an idiot. All right. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm going to switch my headphones here a little bit. So I need this for the audio for the stuff, not for the regular stuff. So I'm just sitting here with headphones in for no particular reason. So I'll just drop one out. The history behind this is, well, this goes back to drama now that's been spinning out for months. This time last year, we were knee-deep in the Kraut Discord server drama. If you guys recall that far back, when Kraut was working with Jeff Holiday and other people, was trying to rope Sargon of Akkad into this attempt of going after alt-right people, and he was targeting in particular Coach Red Pill, but some other people too. So that's for me kind of where the whole story starts in terms of this timeline that we're in. The follow-on of that was that there's been a lot of drama in the right-wing community. There's been a lot of attempts to go after each other. So part of the problem that Sargon faced is that he had a lot of overlap with the alt-right audience. And when Obama was in office and everyone was, going after feminists like me and straw-manning us and using ad hom arguments and lying about us, they were all fighting sort of a common enemy. And so Carl was quite happy to play footsie with the alt-right and say, oh yes, I disagree with you on the whole. Let's export people from our country. But he also said on record that in terms of immigration, he is stronger on that than the alt-right. He said that they're cucks on immigration compared to him because he wants to ban all immigrants from Britain, not just from certain countries. So, that's his position. But with the rise of Trump, the common enemy, I think, is just, it's not what it used to be. The political landscape is changing. And as Carl engaged with people on the far right and the alt-right more and more, he started finding areas of disagreement. And then, when you bring that kind of toxicity into your life because you hang out with those people and you platform them and spend time with them, that toxicity gets into your life. And so he started warring with the alt-right, and this now has been, as you guys maybe have known, it's gone back and forth a couple different ways. There's drama between him and the Killstream or Ethan Ralph or the Ralph Retort because there are accusations about different, people getting kicked off of YouTube in retaliation for this, that, and the other, right? So my understanding of the drama, just to do a little recap before we go forward, is that there has been this, I know it's kind of hard to unpack where it started, but beef between Sargon, Andy Worski, Tonka Saw, and Ralph of the Ralph Retort. Also mixed in there is Kraut, and I think on the edges a little bit David Sherratt. But primarily this has been a tit for tat. Like something bad happens to one group, and they blame the other group. And then the other group has something bad happen to them, and then they blame. And it's not just like blaming the other group, because let's face it, when it came to getting Sargon off of Patreon, it looks pretty clear that was coordinated by alt-right people. But instead of saying the fans of so-and-so, they tend to personalize it. So they make it, like, oh, Ralph did this, Sargon did this, Kraut did this. There's a lot of agency attributed. And so because of that, it's like the beef is growing. Think of it like gangs, they're like street gangs or other criminal gangs. If you've got guys who are running it at the top and their underlings are warring with each other, that's going to create more and more tension with the top guys. That's kind of what's happening here. So the previous iteration we talked about was that Ethan Ralph of the Ralph Retort got booted off of YouTube. I'm just going to start with that recent history. And there were many people who thought that Carl Benjamin should somehow defend it or speak up against it, and because of the way that Ethan Ralph's fans were mocking Carl and harassing him, sort of, trolling him online, he absolutely refused to support Ralph, which, fair enough. Anyway, there's a lot of beef, right? So there's a lot of drama, a lot of high school drama going on between these two. And there's two major updates. One is, of course, you guys know, Sargon got kicked off of Patreon. Looks like all the complaints were organized by the far right, because Patreon said they don't go out to screen people's content. They react to complaints that are filed. So Carl, because he'd gone after Ralph, or seemed unsympathetic to Ralph, he actually sort of antagonized Andy Worski. There's that huge beef. And now there's more beef with Ralph that I'm just learning about, having to do with his Discord access and his Discord server. But there's so much stupid drama going on in here. It's a little bit hard to keep straight. But I want to talk a bit about some of the fallout of Sargon getting kicked off of Patreon, because I don't want to give him the agency of saying he caused all these things. I think this happened, and especially Dave Rubin and Jordan Peterson are taking advantage of the timing of what Sargon getting kicked off of Patreon. All right. Carl, as you guys know, he's got a long reputation of saying racist things, of using slurs, and getting away with it, mostly. When he is held accountable, he finds ways to not be held accountable. For instance, he gets booted off of Twitter, so he just comes back under a fake account. Carl is under the impression, because of his white male entitlement, that consequences just don't apply to him. They just don't. Like, he's never responsible. He's never at fault. Everyone should always look at things from his perspective. He has no obligation to look at anything from the perspective of others and how they might feel. It's always about him. So, screw him, because that's not how the world works. And this is pretty much what Carl is experiencing, real world consequences, and he has no capacity to handle it because he's a spoiled child. So that's the framework. So he was kicked off of Patreon, and part of Patreon's problem is they only cited one thing. If I were advising Patreon, okay, if I were advising them going forward 2-3 weeks ago with their PR case, I would not have picked that one particular instance as the justification. It's not that difficult to go back into Carl's past and find incredibly horrible, bigoted things he said. It's just not. It's an easy internet search. And they could have listed, in all honesty, 20, 30, 40 different things to demonstrate that people have complained about the kind of content he produces and the harassment that he engages in. And less now because he's only got about 5,000 followers on Twitter. I have more Twitter followers last time I checked than Sargon, so it's really hard for him to dogpile me now, unlike back in the days in the past. In fact, many of my tweets mocking him get more likes than his average tweets, so things have changed a little bit on Twitter. But Carl went ahead and so he's done this in the past. Patreon got complaints. You can't really deny that he is violating their terms of service. So it's just, he can claim, oh, I didn't do it on this occasion. I didn't. What Carl wants is like a rule book of like, if you do this, you're banned. If you do this, you're banned. If you do this, you're banned. They want these objective standards as a checklist, right? Because what they want to do is find ways to skirt around the objective standards. When people object to the idea that Patreon looks case by case subjectively at your behavior and judges it in context, people are like, that's not fair. There should be one rule for everyone. Well, there is one rule for everyone, but every context is different. And so if you say this word, they will just change how they do it so that they can skirt along next to it in order to basically argue the law instead of arguing the intent, arguing the effects. And they want to have that debate so that they can nitpick over why they didn't break the rules or why the rules are stupid, rather than take accountability for the words that come out of their mouth. And so I don't have any problem with Carl being kicked off of Patreon. Honestly, I think he should have been kicked off a long time ago, because this is nothing new. And he has been complained about before, but they cleared him. But now if they're going to go ahead and use this standard of manifest observable behavior, he is manifestly, observably engaging in bigoted and hateful behavior through his speech, right? And his actions, the kinds of things that he does. He goes places and the kinds of things he says. So, no, I'm fine with Patreon exercising, and we talk about this in, I think, a Hangout, their corporate free speech. So since we're here, before we go on to the whole, like, the Ralph thing, whatever else. Oh, and I've got a great Joe Rogan clip I want to play for you guys. Let's talk a little bit about these free speech warriors and their supposed commitment to free speech. There's a guy on YouTube, I think I told you about him already, in a Hangout, in a happy hour, YouTube Law. He's totally right-wing. He's really like a right-wing asshole, but he is a lawyer and he's got a legal take. So I don't have to agree with his opinions to respect his legal expertise, because he knows things about the law that I don't. And some things are independent of political opinion, so you don't have to, it doesn't affect, sorry, my pillows are falling apart. I don't have to throw out everything he says as a lawyer because I disagree with his politics. He described in this video about why Patreon was basically justified in doing what they did in terms of Sargon's account, described the current situation in US law. So I'm going to have a drink of my coffee. It's going to get really cold if I don't. So hold on. All right, so back from the pause. In his video on why Patreon was justified, or has the right to do what it did in terms of kicking Carl off its platform, he described a part of the law that I was unfamiliar with and I think is incredibly important to this discussion about Patreon kicking people off of their platform, or anyone else really, because I don't hear the free speech warriors framing the debate in terms of corporate free speech. And according to this YouTube law guy, that is the justification that corporations use to monitor or screen their content. Specifically, there's this, since Citizens United, and in combination with another section of a Communications Act that devolves or articulates that the power of censorship or that kind of stuff belongs to corporations, not to the government, because this is who censors, right? And in the United States, the courts have already decided it's not the job of the government to regulate the content that goes onto a private company's servers or whatever else. So it's up to the company to decide that. And under Citizens United, which gave corporations legal personhood in terms of their free speech rights, the ability to say, this is the content we want to represent our company, and we don't allow this content to represent our company. That's the corporation's free speech. That is them exercising control over their content in order to sort of demonstrate, so that's their free speech to give out their corporate image, right? And to be accountable or responsible and for what kinds of information they put out. So when YouTube demonetizes somebody or monetizes somebody or decides something is age restrictive or whatever regulations that they want to put on their platform, that under the law is viewed as, according to this YouTube lawyer guy, them exercising their free speech. So, sorry, what then, we actually would, if we had an honest conversation about Carl versus Patreon, it wouldn't be about the Silicon Valley conspiracy theory to go after him. It would be a battle of free speech rights. Why should somebody from, let's say, like Carl, who lives in another country, have the right to override the First Amendment rights of Patreon, which is a corporation in the United States, and actually, has legal rights under the US Constitution because of where it's located? Why are Carl's claims to service more important, or why do they override the free speech, abilities of a corporation like Patreon? I don't have to agree with stuff to be able to debate it, so please don't get on there saying, oh, Kristi loves corporations. No, I'm just telling you what the facts are. Just saying this is what is, and this is how I'm seeing it. And I don't see that conversation about framed in terms of free speech. It's always an entitlement. Carl is entitled to have Patreon, whether or not he's a scumbag and they don't want to associate with him. YouTube is people are entitled to YouTube channels where YouTube can't regulate their speech. No. If you want to give a good reason why we should overturn the First Amendment rights of a corporation, then we can have that conversation, but let's have that conversation. And let's frame it, let's move the conversation over to the actual bigger issues instead of your white male entitlement, you crying on a corner because somebody's finally holding you accountable for all the bullshit you spray out of your mouth on a daily basis. Now, that would be an interesting, First Amendment versus First Amendment would be an interesting conversation to have. I would like to hear that. This sort of whining of, well, yes, but First Amendment and Carl can say whatever he wants and blah, blah. No, just no. You're not entitled to walk into a place and demand service when you violate their rules. And Carl's content, whether it was that one instance that they cited only mistakenly, or his body of work. Honestly, just go through his body of work. It's so easy to find instances of him doing exactly what they point out he did. That all being said. So that happened. Boom! Right? So the alt-right, and go back in the chain of events. I guess I'll start with Sargon sent tweets tagging in Andy Worski saying he's going to do a shooting spree and the FBI. He was tagging in Andy Worski into tweets about notifying the Wall Street Journal about him. He went on the kill stream and was baiting Mr. Medicare. Oh, you think I'm going to come after you? You afraid I'm going to come after you, Jim? And all of this stuff going after people's livelihoods. Then, unsurprisingly, their reaction to this, I'm sure their fans' spontaneous, their fans' reaction, I don't think anybody who runs the channel coordinated this, was to be like, fine, we're going to do this to you. They start piling on, apparently, sending mass reports over to Patreon. Patreon looks at the stuff, and let's face it, it violates their terms and conditions. They boot Sargon, and now it's not just this sort of debate on the alt-right side of things. There is also a really, apparently, say scummy, but obvious tactic or obvious opportunity now that Jordan Peterson and Dave Rubin are going to be taking up. And I want to thank Vadim Newquist, I want to thank Creationist Cat for letting his human slave come on the internets. And it was actually, who was it? It was Pascal who had a hangout. And you had a hangout and he was in the chat and he told me about this. So we're going to look at some of the effects of this. People are taking advantage of it. But before we move on, the Sargon and Patreon thing, because this is just, it's been so delicious to watch people react to this. I want to share with you guys, I don't know how I missed this. Joe Rogan responded on his show to Carl's comments, and to the Patreon situation. Even he can't claim, like, he can't justify what Sargon said. They complain about the reaction, but they acknowledge how bad it was. So in the Joe Rogan thing, it's like, I don't know, 11 or 12 minutes long, but he kept repeating this phrase over and over, and I found it so funny. I reduced it down into a little clip because I wanted to save it forever because it was just so entertaining to me. So I'm going to swap over now to my other thing here. Hey, look at me. Actually, I can probably do this one instead. Oh, look at, I'm in the corner. I'm just a little tiny me. Hello. This is my video that has a Joe Rogan reacting to Carl Benjamin's comments that Patreon cited as their justification for kicking him off. And it's just so beauty, so we're going to go ahead and watch that. Should be just fine on the audio, but I'll have a check.
But there's this guy, his name is Carl Benjamin, and he goes by the name of Sargon of Akkad. And he said, and it's a poorly formed thought. So that's a it's a very poorly thought out way of expressing himself. When I'm reading this, I'm like, these are poorly thought out arguments. This is a poorly thought out sentence. It's not well thought out.
Not at all.
It's not good. So he, it was free flowing, and he said a bunch of really stupid things. Yeah. It's just not well thought out.
I mean, this guy needs a class in how to fucking be articulate. I mean, Jesus Christ.
that ending, I just thought it was perfect. When I saw it happening in the video, itself, I was like, oh, this would be the perfect place to just wrap it up because it's a great ending bit to the segment. That's people's reactions. When they actually see what he said, people are horrified. And you can do mental gymnastics to say, oh, well, he was only using the word to make the point that the people in the chat who were teasing him and giving him a hard time, which I thought words couldn't hurt, Carl. I thought words couldn't hurt. And yet here you are in that chat reacting so emotionally and so, oh, I'm a human being. I'm a person. And he reacted poorly and said those things. So no matter how you do the mental gymnastics, you come down to the fact, everyone comes down to the fact that he could have said those things without using the white N-word. He could have made that point without using a homophobic slur. But he didn't. And why didn't he? He deliberately chose those words to be provocative. Why? Because they're racist and homophobic. He was specifically selecting words that he knew were offensive in order to offend people. And somehow the target of his offense justifies his use of racial and homophobic slurs. It's an ends justify the means mentality that I think characterizes Carl's life because he has no principles. So it makes sense that he would do that. Right. So that all happened. But then, behind the scenes, unbeknownst to us until very recently, there's so many con artists on the right-wing side. I mean, the right wing really is a con in part. Part of the being on the right is to con people out of their money. That is, if you look at like Rush Limbaugh and Laura Ingraham and Ann Coulter, and going back all the way into like religious evangelicals who do social commentary, demonize people on the left, and then raise money off of it. So much of the political right is about, because they love money, right? They're all about capitalism and business. They all have a sense of entitlement because they all think the ones who have penises thinks that makes them superior, and the ones who don't have penises don't realize how little respect they have within their movement. Right? These guys are shrewd in a way that Sargon simply can't be because he lacks the mental discipline and effort to apply himself to learn these kinds of things. But sorry, I'm trying to get comfortable. I'm always stacking pillows up behind me to keep my smaller back, to sit up straight. And it doesn't always work out that well. Is that better? We'll find out. These guys have seen the writing on the wall coming for a long time because they know that the kind of people they attract are racist scumbags. And eventually the kind of scumbags that they attract will catch up with them. I'm not saying everybody who likes Jordan Peterson is a scumbag, anyone who likes David Rubin is a scumbag, but their scumbag factor is much higher than other parts of the political sphere. These guys see what's coming down the pike, or pipe, but I guess it's pike. Pike is an East Coast thing, I think. I don't know. I always thought it was pipe because we don't have any pikes in the Midwest. But anyway, so I'm going to show you this little clip, parts of it anyway. The purpose of it is they're laying out their alternative to Patreon, and this is what I see when I watch this. Dave Rubin and Jordan Peterson both saw the writing on the wall. They both had ideas about alternative funding sources. And when Carl got kicked off of Patreon and started whining to everybody, right? He's pulling in all his chits. He probably even called Steve Bannon or emailed Steve Bannon. I wouldn't be surprised. Help me. I'm being held accountable for saying bigoted and racist things on the internet after years and years and years. He ran around crying and demanding an appeal, but also saying that he wouldn't go back to Patreon even if he won his appeal. Just basically, having a temper tantrum, trying to get attention to himself, playing the victim, all because he was being held accountable for what he said. Peterson and Dave Rubin, I think, were brought together on this specific issue from what they describe, and started comparing notes and realizing that they each had certain pieces of the puzzle to create an alternative to Patreon. And then, once they realized that, the money-hungry parts of them, that sort of right-wing greed, really kicked in. And they realized, hey, we can take this opportunity of people who want to defend Carl's use of the N-word and the white N-word. This is the opportunity. This is when Patreon dissociates itself from someone using the N-word in an intentionally provocative and offensive way. That's the hill we want to die on. That's where we want to say free speech is here. And that's what they're using as their moment to launch, or to try to launch, their alternative to Patreon. So, I've got the window up, almost ready to go. Let's go ahead and look at that. So this is 10 minutes long. We'll play little bits of it. I did watch it last night, but I can't watch the whole thing, without commenting. So I'll play this, and if need to, I will stop from time to time to comment. So.
Well, Dave and I are here today to talk about Patreon. And so I'll start. We've been engaged in a lengthy series of email exchanges with all of the people in our network, and no one is happy at all with what's been happening. And so we've been determining what our options are. And we looked at Subscribestar, but it looks like PayPal decided to cut funding out from them. And so it doesn't look like moving to an alternative provider, an alternative commercial provider that's out of our bailiwick, out of our control, is going to be viable.
All right, so they want to control the provider. That's good to know. A comment on this Subscribestar, or whomever it was. This is another part of the Sargon conspiracy theory that, if people just think through stuff, they'd realize how dumb they sound. So the same guy who I just cited on the corporate free speech parts of the U.S. law made another video about Patreon violating antitrust law that to me sounds right up there with InfoWars conspiracy theory, tinfoil hat kind of stuff. The idea here, and this is so dumb, right? The accusation that's being put up is, try to follow this now, because it does take a lot of creative thinking to put these points together. You have to be a shitlord fanboy or fangirl to really think that this makes sense. Event 1. Patreon kicks Carl off of Patreon because he said racist and homophobic things many times in the past, but they cite one instance of him doing it. Then a bunch of people go over to this other alternative funding site, Subscribe Star or whatever else, and they start using that as an alternative to Patreon. Now, also in this time frame, PayPal looks at this new funding stream or whatever else. They've been looking at it for a while, whatever, and PayPal decides to disassociate from them. That's my understanding of this. That just as all these shitlords were coming over, the alternative site was sort of declined by PayPal as in terms of doing their financial services. And this means to the conspiracy theorists that there is a big conspiracy, an antitrust conspiracy, that would result in Patreon being the only provider of this kind of stuff in the market. So what happened here was an antitrust violation. The antitrust violation is premised on the idea that PayPal over here would hurt a competitor of Patreon over here to help Patreon corner the market. But what I don't hear is what motivation would PayPal have for doing that? Because if you think about it, if Patreon customers were moving over to a new platform, PayPal wouldn't actually lose any money. They would just get those same transactions from a different source, right? So there's no net loss of customer from a person going from Patreon over to an alternative revenue stream if that alternative revenue stream uses PayPal. It literally doesn't matter where the transaction comes from. They make the same amount of money. So if PayPal cuts off an alternative funding stream, they're losing customers. If Patreon is losing subscribers, shitlords are flooding away from it to go to the alternative, they're losing customers. So if both companies are losing customers, where's the antitrust violation? Who benefits from what motivation financially does PayPal have to reduce its own profits on behalf of Patreon? Like, it just doesn't, seriously, like, if you don't think about it, you just go put companies in a row, maybe you can go, oh, okay, these things happen. No, you only put them in a row because you're not thinking straight. You're not questioning. What's the phrase? Cui bono? Who benefits? It's in every crime TV show, right, that you watch. Who follow the money? Who benefits? And these idiots just go immediately to conspiracy theories without really thinking through the evidence. And so this idea that somehow there's an antitrust violation, please show me any rational reason that connects Patreon and PayPal working in concert when they're both losing customers because of their decisions. So that, I wanted to put that out there before moving on with this little video. I guess I could have gone bigger. Sorry guys, sometimes I forget. Sometimes I forget where I am in the video, and so as a consequence, I don't big myself up when I'm talking. So I was just sorry, I was little bitty Kristi in the corner, but now I'll go back to big reaction, small me scene. There you go. Let's see what else Peterson and Dave Rubin have to say here.
So Dave, why don't you describe what we talked about today?
Yeah, well, first, I think we should just make it very clear for everybody how significant what happened to Carl Benjamin Sargon of Akkad is. It doesn't matter what you think of him or whether you agree with him or any of that stuff. The banning of him for doing something that was not on the Patreon platform, that wasn't even done on his channel, because of a word he said where he was using the word against the alt-right or the neo-Nazis or whatever you want to call them, is a massive move of that line of what's acceptable.
So just so you know, Dave Rubin thinks saying white N-words, as long as it's on someone else's channel, is perfectly acceptable. Just on the record. I mean, that's not, you know, I'm not putting words into his mouth. That's actually what the dude just said, right? He just said, whatever you think of him, when you do stuff on other people's platforms and you're held accountable for it, that somehow is terrifying to Dave Rubin. Why is accountability so difficult for people on the right to accept when they want to impose a lot of accountability on everybody else? Did anyone else find that curious? I know I do. All right, let's get back to the reaction. I'm just pointing, I'm being snarky because I can be.
Now, there's all sorts of debates we can have, and we've had them, of what lines should be, if there should be lines at all. But the fact that this guy got booted with no chance of recourse, with no warning, just like that, it's just an extension of everything else that we've all been talking about.
Also, given that it's also the case that he didn't break Patreon's rules of engagement, the ones that they stated, and that Conte.
All right, so there's another lie that's going around. There's this lie that Patreon somehow, because they'd said something years ago about what they evaluated at the time, that they're somehow not able to change their minds or update their rules. If Patreon said 2 years ago that anything that you do offside of the platform is not our business, and that was the rules at the time, those were the rules at the time. If Patreon changed it, and after the Lawrence Southern thing said, whoa, wait a minute. Actually, now that we think about it, if you're a total asshole in public and then you put our product up as the way to make you money, yeah, maybe we want to look at your general reputation, because your general reputation, you're associating yourself with us. Every time you put up a video and you say, give me money through Patreon, that's a reflection on Patreon. Sorry, I'm going where I forgot my train of thought here. So I'll get back into it. I'm sure I'll remember what it was. I'm a little bit tired still. I think it's just complaining about, changing the rules. That was it. But then, they update their terms of service. Twitter updates its terms of service. YouTube updates its terms of service. And Patreon, after Lawrence Southern, updated its terms of service. Patreon has not done a lot of this. They haven't gotten a lot of crap yet. They've done very little control hate speech and other stuff in terms of funding that. And it's now coming down on them, and they're not particularly well equipped. But that doesn't mean that they should have their corporate free speech rights violated, Mr. Free Speech Defender, right? But not according to Dave. When you do something he doesn't like, then suddenly it's egregious and it's ridiculous, and you must be stopped and you must be forced to associate with racists and bigots because free speech.
Had talked to you about the fact that that wasn't going to happen, and that Patreon hasn't responded well to this.
Well, look, Jack Conte came into my studio in my home and said, he said a phrase that I had never heard before. Maybe you had heard it before: manifest observable behavior. So you had never even heard that phrase before, right? I thought maybe this was just something that went past me. Okay. Now, of course, manifest observable behavior, MOB, mob. You can't make that up. I mean, there's a real beauty there. But so the point was that it had to be about behavior, and then in their terms of service, it also had to be about what was happening on platforms. So
I just want to point out, speech is behavior. Speech is an act. It's a speech act. And therefore it is manifest and observable and behavior. Because it's spoken doesn't mean it doesn't exist as an action or a behavior. And again, these guys are, I don't know if they're being deliberately ignorant, or they just don't understand the concept of what counts as behavior from like a social science point of view. Certainly Jordan Peterson, you would think, would understand that communication is a behavior. But I guess maybe not when it's inconvenient to his pocketbook.
So at every firewall here of what would have been acceptable, Patreon failed. And they've put us in a position where, look, I called you last Saturday when this was really catching fire. And I said, Patreon is about 65 to 70% of my rev. I have a company now with employees, full-timers, part-timers. I was actually considering deleting it right then and there, which no one in their right mind would do. No business person would do. And
it's so funny. Oh yes, I'm going to, have solidarity because I'm so morally outraged. This is such a violation. But, God, I get so much money from here. So, and that's what I really love is all the people who are sort of like, who are in the same financial sort of area of, basically they share the same audience pool. They give money to Sargon, they give money to Peterson, they give money to Dave Rubin, they give money to Stixhammer, they give money to Logic, they give a lot of money to these shitlords. Now, Carl gets booted off the source or the platform, not the platform, it gets basically refused service by the bank, is essentially what Patreon is doing. Because he's been a bigoted, racist asshole. And he calls for his own fans to mass quit and leave the platform with him. And now Dave Rubin and other people are mad at Patreon, not Carl. But he's the one who said, hey, I can't be on this platform, but don't let that, stop you from supporting other great creators. He's like, no, everybody quit Patreon if they're not going to associate with me. It's wrong. It's wrong that they refuse to associate with a guy who says racist things and homophobic things, bigoted things and hateful things. They should be forced to associate with me. And if Patreon won't accept that they're going to be, they should morally be forced to put up with whatever I put out, well then let's all leave. Like, it's fine to force association for Patreon, but if they don't want to associate with Patreon as fans, of course they have the right to just pick up and leave. Again, it's the disconnect. It's a different set of standards or expectations. What they can do isn't the same as other people. They get special treatment. They're entitled to this. They're never accountable. And it's just funny to watch them be idiots.
I've taken big risks in the past. Before I was on Patreon, we were at Aura TV. Me and my
who cares,
producer,
Dave? Come on.
And I did set up a Subscribestar account, although I never quite finished setting it up, partly because Subscribestar seemed to fall apart almost immediately under attack. And also, it wasn't obvious that, I also read their terms of agreement, and it wasn't obvious that we weren't going to be just in exactly the same situation.
Yeah, isn't it funny? Companies don't want to associate with racists. Why? Why would the free market find it a bad thing to unnecessarily alienate the majority of customers who are not actively racist and find racism distasteful? Why would a company want to appeal to more customers? It's just, wow, I don't get it.
Again, and there's only so many mistakes you can make before the mistakes start to become fatal. So we actually wanted to come up with a serious and stable solution. And I've been working on for months, literally for months. It's been 6 months. I've been working on a system to allow authors and other people who engage publicly on intellectual issues to interact more effectively with their readers and viewers and listeners. And it occurred to me this week that with a bit of modification, that could serve exactly the function that we're hoping it would serve. So what we're going to try to do as fast as we possibly can is to set this...
Is to monetize that shit. That's what we're gonna monetize that shit as fast as we can. If we can get it done before Christmas, we're gonna get money in our pocket ASAP. Watch.
System up on a subscriber model that's analogous to Patreon. It'll have a bunch of additional features, which I don't want to talk about right now, and I don't want to overpromise, but the system is because the system is new. But we're going to try to get that rolled out as fast as we possibly can. So, and we have a number of people who are hypothetically interested in moving their subscription service over to it. Dave?
Yeah, so not only do they have like a framework that they can monetize, a communications framework that they can monetize into a subscriber, thing right away, right? They have a bunch of shitlords who are going to move over into it. Oh, this isn't going to be like Gab at all. I'm sure that this whole sort of like when you put no terms of service and no restrictions, or very minimal ones, or ones that are just sort of pro forma, they're not meant to be enforced, they're just there to kind of CYA, cover your ass. I'm sure this isn't going to go, there's nothing going to go wrong with that. No, I'm sure that white supremacists won't flock to the site and try to use it because they have looser restrictions on what kinds of content, can be published without any repercussions. I'm sure this is going to go fine. Just watch.
Dave and I are very seriously planning to do this as soon as we can do it in an intelligent way. And so,
and by the way, one of the interesting things here, we haven't talked about this, but I'm guessing your experience is just like mine. The amount of emails that I have received, and of course tweets and everything else, but mostly emails from developers, from investors, from regular people, from engineers. I mean, just anyone going, this is the one. Because, the issue with all of these free speech things is it's like you don't want to swing too early before you realize that the problem's gotten to critical mass. But then most likely you're going to swing too late. All
right, so listen how he's framing this here. Are you listening to what he's actually thinking about? What he's saying is, when he said, I've talked to developers and I talked to all these other people, they approach me and say, this is the moment. What is he talking about? I think he's saying is that Carl using white N-words and his shitlord army that loves his racism and homophobic and woman-hating content are going to draw a line in the sand saying, we're going to follow our shitlord to whatever platform he goes to. And these guys see a bunch of shitlords with money burning holes in their pockets and going, yes, the white N-word, this is our moment. This is the time where we need to capture the wave in the market in order to bring all the shitlords. Bring in all the shitlords. Love all the shitlords. Not all the SWAT. Hey, there we go. That's what he really is interested in here. Like, this is our moment. There's a big shitlord army that's primed to come over to a new Hatreon that we won't call Hatreon because it's too obvious, but we need to capitalize, literally capitalize on this moment. And when he talks about investors and engineers, so he's bringing all the money side of it and the venture capitalism and all the sort of right-wing people who are looking to make a buck off of these dupes that follow Sargon and whatever else. And they're thinking, yeah, this is the moment to get in on that action. It's really amazing that they're so obvious about it, but, you know, it's not like these guys are, you know, I guess professors. Well, at least in this case, they're transparently obvious in terms of how they're drooling over the thought of money that's going to be coming their way. Watch.
Lines will have moved so far that we may be on the outside of them. And that's why this one, I think, was so interesting, because Carl, you know, years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, when I started waking up to what was going on with the left, obviously, and all of the free speech stuff, everyone said, you've got to talk to Sargon of Akkad. He's the guy that's been, so this is the guy that's been ahead of all of this.
Sargon too was like, he was very helpful to me when I was first under attack, you know, and he's a brave guy.
Carl is the biggest coward out there who hides behind his fanboys, cries that he's victimized anytime he's held to account, and will basically look for a second standard. You know, if he's kicked off of Twitter, he has no respect for the fact that he's been kicked off. He'll subvert it, and he'll do a second account and a third account in order to get what he wants. And this is it. He's not smart. He's just selfish and self-centered and egotistical. But then again, does it make sense that Jordan Peterson would relate to that?
And it's a real mistake what Patreon has done to him. And
right. Okay, just think about this. Think about this. Patreon, according to Jordan Peterson, made a mistake when it held a man accountable for using white N-words, for saying, you're not even acting like white people. White people aren't supposed to behave this way toward each other. And also using a homophobic slur. That is what Jordan Peterson thinks should not be punished. That is what he thinks is acceptable speech. That, to me, gives an insight into the kinds of things that they're going to be willing to defend on this money-making platform that they're setting up. So I fully look for Mr. Medicare to be joining this site and using it. I fully expect the Ralph Retort and the Killstream to be going over there and, you know, sliding into the DMs, as it were, of Jordan Peterson and Dave Rubin's little capital venture here, because they share the same ethics. That there are no ethics, there are no boundaries, there's no accountability. All you have is men in power, white men in power who are privileged, using abusive language to people who have no power. And that's what they consider fair, because they're assholes. All right, let's get back onto it.
And as I said, everybody in our network is extremely upset about it. Like, we've been sending emails back and forth, well, probably with 30 or 40 people. And so, as Dave said earlier, we wanted to make this video today to let everybody that we're communicating with know that we have not been sleeping on this front.
They are ready to defend the use of white N-words, you guys. This incensed the fact that Sargon would be held accountable for using a racial slur just one time, you know, like, there's so many more times you could talk about, but, you know, just even holding him accountable once is outrageous to them. These guys, these 30, 40 people, they're all about the white N-word. They're all about defending racial slurs and homophobic statements. Yay! That's real character there. I wonder if that's going to be in his next rules of life, like, have no moral core. Let anything be acceptable as long as you profit from it. I mean, those are his real rules to life. I mean, we all know that, right?
Man, people are trying to figure out what to do so this stops happening. And we have a good plan, and we're going to try to implement it as soon as possible. So if I would ask everybody who's listening to be, reasonably patient. Imagine that this will take somewhere between a week and a month to sort out properly.
They are not waiting at all. They are not waiting. Oh my God. They're like, how soon can we get that money in? Like, just get the transaction set up. Let's bring in that PayPal money. Let's bring in that Stripe money. We'll work out the accounting later. Let's just set this up and before Christmas, because after Christmas, people are going to have like bills and stuff. They're going to have to pay for the presents or whatever else, or they're going to have to organize for their taxes coming up in January if they owe money to the state or feds or whatever. So quick. Open up the bank. Let the money flow in. These guys are conmen. They're not intellectual. They're not about intellectual integrity. They're not even about ethics. They're all about the Benjamins, baby. And in this case, they're all about the Benjamins being a racist, baby.
We're going to try to get something up in the next week, hopefully before Christmas, if we can't manage that. Because when you implement something like this, there are technical complications that might emerge that you don't foresee. But I don't want people to get the impression that we're taking this lightly or lying down and that we're not looking for a permanent alternative, because we are. And I think we can come up with a better alternative. And so that's the plan.
As I said, I wish them really good luck. How you guys are going to screen out, Richard Spencer from your platform, that's going to be interesting to me. It's going to be the same thing that hit up with Kevin Logan pointed out to Based Mama when she was setting up Kilroy. If you say that you're a free speech conference, how are you going to deal with white supremacists? Ultimately, that's what these rules are put in place to protect a company from. Association with openly bigoted jerkwads. So how are they going to do that? Or won't they? And if they don't, will PayPal come along and go, hey, your site's toxic. You have a bunch of white nationalists, white supremacists, bigots, hate, maybe incels, because Jordan Peterson will be associated with this. So all his incel army will come along following him. And they're going to go, we want nothing to do with you. You guys are gross. And then they're going to go, but free speech. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would say. I would just add that it was like we were waiting for a moment. We've watched these doors slowly closing on us, all of us, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Facebook, who's getting banned, who's getting shadow banned, payment processing, everything else. And we are taking this as seriously as possible. Of course, Jordan, who's working harder than anyone on the face of the planet, somehow you managed to also partly build a platform over the course of the past year in the middle of all of that.
We knew that this was lurking in the background and that this was going to be a problem. And
so like I said, at least they're honest that they've been, how can we monetize this? How can we figure out a way? Because if people are going to start having standards, ethical standards, they're going to start having even if the company doesn't have a moral core, at least acknowledges that its customers do, and people don't want to associate with a company that funds white nationalists and ethno-nationalists. So, if that's the direction, how can we make money off of people who have no morals or ethics? Yeah, that's pretty much their game plan.
Dave, you've spent lots of time talking to investors and developers about building alternatives to these platforms that seem to be willing to throw their weight around in an increasingly arbitrary manner. But it's not like it's a
arbitrary manner. Don't say the N-word. Don't use bigoted slurs. What was it that Sargon said to Kristi on Twitter and his illegal account? Not illegal, but unauthorized account. That most of the reason he even uses racist language is to set off or trigger what he called neo-Puritan people like her because of our sensitivities. Yeah, the fact that you deliberately admitted to dehumanizing other people in order to get a reaction is pretty much what racists do. And that's what they're calling arbitrary? No. What it means is Jordan Peterson doesn't have a fucking core set of values. And as long as it makes him money, then it's okay.
Simple thing to do.
People want somebody to say enough is enough. And I mentioned this in a live stream I did the other day. But, you know, I've watched my Patreon drop. We've lost around 600 patrons, I think about $5,000 a month. But in a weird way, I've actually been inspired by it because I'm watching people.
I agree.
They're like, oh shit, man, I'm losing money. I gotta do something. Gotta get more money. How am I gonna get this shitlord money? That's what it's really about. Oh yeah, look at all these people leaving. I'm freaking out. Now the question is, how do I get that money back? And I am, you know, the fact that they're blaming Patreon and not Sargon for calling for his fans to leave and pick up and move sticks to someplace else is again hilarious. They never put accountability where it's meant to be. They're always blaming the people who have an ethical core and take things responsibly and act responsibly as if they are the enemy. In this case, you know, Patreon trying to hold Carl accountable for his and using the N-word in a deliberately racist way. He was using it to be provocative. He admitted it. And these guys are defending it and looking how to monetize it. It's gross.
So it's like on one hand, people are emailing me and they're saying I'm dropping my patronage and I'm really pissed and it's not about you and I want to support you. And on the other hand, my business side is going, that's not great. But we will solve this thing. I have
feel
nothing
the same
better.
way. I've lost 1,000 subscribers and I feel exactly the same way. It's like, well, they're telling Patreon to go to hell. And, you know, it's not so good for me.
Yeah. Well, and again, don't blame Patreon. Yeah, don't hate the player, hate the game. They're working in a free market system where if they are associated with Nazis and white supremacists, they're going to lose mainstream support. But again, it's not about even understanding the market or defending corporate free speech here. Is he caring about that? No. Patreon is acting arbitrarily. Why? Because it's holding people accountable for being racists. This guy wants to moralize? Seriously?
On the financial front, although that's not too big a catastrophe at the moment, they're taking the right stand and encouraging us, let's say, or encouraging someone to do something about this. So anyways, that's
I like what you said. If we can just ask you guys to be reasonably patient. We're talking to everybody that you can think of and some people that you can't think of. We're going to fix this. We're going to fix it.
Yeah, well, we're going
to take your money, guys. We're going to take your money as soon as we can. As soon as we can, we're going to open up those bank accounts and we're just going to, you pour in all that money because we know you like to burn money for shitheads online. And we, according to these guys, they are those shitheads.
Or at least we're going to do our best to fix it. There's going to be some bumps along the way, man, because we have to speed this process up too. So we'll have to consider this a beta version. But at minimum, we hope to provide an easy way of switching to a new subscription service within the next very short while. And thank you everyone for your continued patience and your continued support and your attention and your thoughts and your reaction to all of this. And it's very much appreciated. And it does help us, I would say, maintain motivation to continue doing this constantly.
Yeah, they see that money. Ooh, I smell shitlord money. I smell an opportunity. Now they're motivated. Now they're focused. Yeah. All right, guys. So I've been going for an hour. I am going to continue, but what I do need is a break. So I'm going to get a bit more coffee. I'm going to stretch my legs because I'm sitting, with my legs all bent up like that, and they need to move around after an hour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on the pre-show bit with the music and the scroll. I'm going to mute my own mic, and I'm going to take about a 3-minute break. So right now, according to the stats, we've been going live for a minute. We've been doing all this in a minute. We've been live for an hour and 6 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and swap over to that, and I should be back in 3 to 4 minutes. So if you want to take this opportunity to check something else online or go have a drink yourself or watch a commercial, you can go ahead and do that. Otherwise, I'll be back about 10 minutes after in about 3 or 4 minutes. So catch you guys later. In a couple minutes, and we'll be back and do the second part of the show. Bye. I lied. I was a little bit longer than I said I was going to be. That's because I have a good excuse. My coffee maker had no more water, so I had to filter some more because we have really, really hard water in Cologne. You can't just take water out of the tap and put it into the coffee maker, or you're gonna get tons of lime scale. So filtering the water took more time than I planned. An extra 2 minutes, so apologize, guys, for being that late. Yes. So this has gone way longer than I thought it was. I thought I would be able to do like the Trump and the Sargon stuff in an hour, and that clearly didn't happen. But for those of you who are happy to stick around, I'm going to be honest. This is a pretty comfortable way to operate on YouTube. I feel really comfortable in this setting, just talking to you guys one-on-one like this. And now with the OBS setup and the ability to swap things around, it makes it so much easier. So I hesitate to commit to doing like a Sunday show every week long term, because what I found is whenever I've tried to do series in the past, my life is just too complicated and I end up getting busy and dropping it and then moving on to something else. But in terms of like committing to something where I just show up and talk about what I think, I probably can commit to that. So I'm going to try. It might be my 2019 New Year's resolution is to do more of these sort of Sunday hangouts, because Sunday in Germany is really super quiet, other than brunch, which is my favorite thing in the world. Like in terms of meals, I love me a brunch. I love me a bit of mimosa and fresh everything, eggs and pasta and bread and yogurt and fruit and pastries and everything you could want. So maybe I'll make this more of a regular thing for 2019 and see how it goes. Right, what should we do now? I guess, in all honesty, I'm a little bit, let me finish up on this drama bit, and then we're going to swap over and do the Joyner Lucas thing that I said we would do. And hopefully, we won't get copyright strike from it if there's enough breaks in the music and stuff. But to wrap up this Sargon thing, the current state, there's been more drama. There's been more drama now. Alright, so this happened. This is part of the fallout of Sargon getting kicked off of Patreon. That, capitalist vultures have recognized this as a business opportunity that they can profit off of, and so they're scrambling now to set up their own version of Patreon/Gab in order to bring in 100% of the money of white supremacists and other people that they don't have a problem with aligning themselves with, morally or politically. And we're going to see how it goes, because one thing that I have observed in the last year is companies don't like white supremacists, basically. People don't want to associate with people who are known for being complete racists. That tends to be a bad business model. And even if Jordan Peterson and Dave Rubin managed to pull this off, which I think there's a lot of reasons that they might, because they're very greedy and they have a lot of people who look up to them and see an opportunity to make money off of their fame. It'll probably get set up, and it will probably have, I'm sure people like Carl will go there, and Armored Skeptic would probably, anyone who claims to be a critic of the left while being on the left but are actually right-wing asshats, all those people will go over to this. And then, as I said, if they don't have terms of service that restrict people like Ethan Ralph and everybody that they object to, that they're warring with, fact is that those places are going to use them as an alternative as well. So we'll see if it just goes the way of Gab, which is my prediction. So you heard it here first. Before it's even up and running and collecting all that dumbass people's money, I'm going to guess it's going to go the way of Gab. All right. Right. Okay. I forgot. I was saying about the drama. So the other drama that came out of it, apparently now, Sargon's peeps are mad about him getting kicked off by the alt-right. And so there was some Discord. Ethan Ralph's Discord got shut down. And so there's still war. There's still beefing going on between Carl and the alt-right. There's like all of the fighting inside the right wing right now is, I just bring popcorn, because it's super entertaining. And I don't see, they talk about the left is eating itself. They always project bullshit that's happening in their lives. The right is eating itself. Between people who are openly white nationalists and people who just won't go that far but are pretty much with them on everything else. That's where the fight is happening right now between Carl and those guys. All right. And I'm not going to do the Trump stuff because I just don't have the energy for it. So let's look at Joyner Lucas's I'm Not Racist. So I'll bring that up. You guys can look at the pretty fire while I'm pulling that up on YouTube. Yeah. Okay. Now, this video is, if you've seen it already, you know how incredibly powerful it is. And if you haven't seen it, I'm going to be honest, it has the use of the N-word in it. So a bit of backstory to this before we watch it, and I'll go ahead and right now swap over so you can see the screen. Joyner Lucas, amazing hip-hop artist. My understanding from it is that he is biracial, so he has, experience, and from my understanding, again, that if he's growing up biracial, he has parts of his family that represent different parts of America. In this video, he writes an incredibly powerful dialogue, as it were, between a white man and a black man. And neither of the people in this video are Joyner Lucas, by the way. So he brought in two people. He's not putting himself, even though he wrote it, he's not putting himself in either position. And what I've noticed in watching some reaction videos is I watched this and was blown away by it. It made me feel uncomfortable, but not the kind of discomfort I experienced. I think was very educational, because when I watch reaction videos to this, especially if it's white men reacting, there is an immediate defensive-ness. There is, I think, unconsciously, white men who see this, and as a white person too, I maybe put myself more, like you see first the white person, you go, okay, here's a white person who's about to say incredibly racist things, and instead of seeing that character as a character, as someone else, there's an immediate, I have to now defend this, or I have to protect myself, or I have to somehow explain this away. And as you'll see, the comments made by the white character are brutal. And what I tend to see is white people saying, oh, that's a stereotype, or that's not me, or that's not, that's just a minority of white people. What it fails to recognize, in my opinion, is that even though you might say that's a minority of your experience with white people, for people who are not white who deal with those racists, those people are racist all the time, right? Or they're disrespectful in many ways. So you don't negate the racism by saying, oh, well, that's not me. You don't fix the racism by saying it's only a small percentage, right? That's dismissing the problem, not trying to solve it. And one of the reasons I wanted to watch this video with you guys is, especially like as white people, I think we need to acknowledge that what this character, the white character, is saying represents what black people hear. That's what you need to be like listening with your ears. You need to go, okay, I'm not listening to this to defend the white person. I'm listening to this to hear what is being said to the people in the black community, and especially black men, because it's two men talking, obviously. So with that preface, I'm going to go ahead and play the video. And again, I want you to consciously, if you've not seen it before, think, this is what it sounds like from the white community, from certain elements of the white community, but this is here, and this is part of people's lives, and it's what they have to deal with, even if you don't have to deal with it. All right, so let's go with Joyner Lucas's I'm Not Racist. You know what, I wonder if they have, they don't have CCTV, or not CCTV, they don't have closed captions, and unfortunately. I wish they did, because some of the lyrics might go a bit fast, and I have to pause the music every once in a while to comment on it. So just so you know, this won't be listening through it all the way through.
With all due respect, I don't have pity for you black niggas. That's the way I feel. Screaming Black Lives Matter, all the black guys rather be deadbeats than pay your bills. Yelling nigga this and nigga that. Call everybody nigga and get a nigga mad. As soon as I say nigga, then everyone react and wanna swing at me and call me racist cause I ain't black.
All right. He doesn't delay confronting the problem. And what I see here is a sort of naive, like white bubble view of if you get to say the word why can't I, without even making an attempt to acknowledge the history or the misuse or the pain that comes with it, or the notion of reclamation. Why do you reclaim a word? What is the purpose of reclaiming a word to a community? And none of that, of course, goes into it because it's the selfish, how come you get to say that word and I can't? And that seems to be a very childish default reaction, but it does seem to be one I see a lot on social media. And I think as people mature, they grow up a little bit and become decent, compassionate human beings, realize that it's not just about saying a word. It's about using a word in a specific context because of its history, not despite of its history.
We'll pound that then. Talking about slavery like you was around back then. Like you was picking cotton off the fucking ground back then. Like you was on the plantation getting down back then. Alright. Look. I see a black man aiming his gun.
Alright, so in that line, what he's saying is history has no role in the present. That if something happened 100 years ago, you can't claim to be affected by it because it was an act 100 years ago, of course. Ignoring the fact that those historical settings didn't just go away. It's not like the effects of slavery have been mitigated and fixed in our lives. In the 21st century, we are still living with the economic structures set up after slavery was made illegal. And it was really just slavery, but without the law, sharecropping, economic slavery, making sure that people are disempowered, marginalized, more focused on surviving than thriving in order to keep them down. So if you have a system that's set up like that from the business side in terms of hiring and ownership, the GI Bill being biased so black families couldn't build as much wealth in their mortgages the way that white families easily could in the States, and the police system that's set up in all of these barriers, and just go, hey, slavery was 100 years ago. Like, no, it's not. And I think white people generally, like as a stereotype, don't, unless they're a little bit woke, right, and thought about this, they don't experience that history, and so they discount it. And that's what Joyner Lucas is pointing to here. It's kind of an ignorance of white privilege, because white people don't have to worry about being killed when they're pulled over by the police. They don't extend that empathy to anyone else because they lack the experience, and therefore they discount accusations of police wrongdoing.
But I'd rather see a black man claiming his son. And I don't mean just for one day and you done. I mean, you still trapped in a rut. And I work my ass off and pay my taxes for what? So you can keep living off free government assistance, food stamps for your children, but you still trying to sell them for some weed.
All right, here's the sort of notion of, I pay my taxes, therefore I can tell you what you can do with your life. I pay my taxes. You paid your taxes too. When you pay sales tax, you pay gas tax, you do any transaction in the United States, there's going to be a tax on it. And therefore, you're paying into the system. But if you need it, I'm going to judge you and I can decide, oh, you can have food stamps, but you can't buy this kind of food. And you can have, some kind of assistance, but you can't buy this and control every bit of your life, right? Now, this is it. It's a sense of ownership over a person because of a benefit that's earned by everyone who pays taxes. And there's a lot of this sense of grievance. People who, they say they pay taxes and then other people benefit, are oftentimes ignoring corporate tax breaks and corporate exemptions, and they're focused on class warfare, the slightly less poor against the poor, that sense of, regulating somebody over whom, you have some economic status, rather than looking up the chain and seeing where the real problems come from. Okay, continuing.
Eat some liquor or a fucking babysitter while you party on the road because you ain't got no fucking goals. You already late. You motherfuckers need to get your damn priorities straight. Wait. It's like you proud to be fake, but you lazy as fuck. And you rather sell drugs and get a job and be straight. And then you turn around and complain about the poverty rate. Fuck out of my face.
Again, pausing for context, but this sort of notion that People who don't get jobs are somehow not looking for work or don't want work or are lazy and want to be on welfare, as opposed to the fact that capitalism currently thrives on having a certain percentage of the population unemployed. Why? Because if you have full employment, that then makes labor a scarcity and people can start competing for better wages. They can go to better wage paying jobs, and therefore companies find labor costs end up becoming something that they have to be competitive about in order to attract more candidates and better candidates and retain them. And that's why capitalism actually requires a certain portion of people always be unemployed in order to drive wages down, in order to force competition between workers so that companies can benefit from that competition. And if we know that, and that's just literally how capitalism works and operates, then I think we have a responsibility, understanding that our economic prosperity depends on the idea that some people will have to be employed. I mean, I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying that's a structure. Then we need to mitigate that poverty and that necessary outcome of capitalism as it's currently structured by providing a massive social safety net. That's how you compensate for it and help people at least not be exploited and driven under by capitalism, in my opinion. Now, I don't want to have a whole conversation about capitalism, but in terms of the mentality that white people, sort of rural whites or conservative whites, whatever, the stereotypes, again, they're not thinking about the system. They're looking at an individual and blaming them for their circumstances rather than the circumstances themselves for how they track individuals or where individuals can end up as a result of them.
Can't escape problems. You can pray for some change, but can't break a dollar. Got nobody else to blame, so you blame Donald. They fucked the world with a Make America Great condom. My voice been back. I'm not racist. My sister's boyfriend's black. I'm not racist. My sister-in-law's baby cousin Tracy got a brother and his girlfriend's black.
Right, you love this line? I do. Okay, can I also just point out, I want you guys to appreciate that this entire piece of music is written in rhyming hip-hop construction. This is a narrative. It's amazing if you think about it. It's an exposition. It's a story. It's a dialogue between two characters. We haven't even gotten to the other character yet, but all of it is done in hip-hop rhyme and hip-hop flow and hip-hop structure. And this, you don't even notice it. You don't, in some ways, it's so fluid and it's so natural, and the rhyming scheme is so effortless that you don't really realize you're listening to a hip-hop song. At least I don't. So please pay attention to that, because it's that sort of craft when you don't notice it, that it's that good. Like, that's how good the artist is, that you are able to just get caught up in the story and not think about all of the elegant construction that went behind it.
My head's in the cloud. Heard there's not enough jobs for all the men in your house. Maybe we should build a wall to keep the Mexicans out. Or maybe we should send them all to the ghetto for now. I'm not racist.
Oh, right. So I forgot to say in the last one. Oh, yeah, I've got a friend who's black. My sister's boyfriend is black. I know somebody else. And that somehow inoculates me from racism because I have people who are not white in my life. That's not how it works. And we all know that that's not how it works. But also here, and I think Joyner and Lucas is saying something quite profound. The way that persons like Donald Trump will say, hey, you know what, to the African-American community or any other immigrant community or any community that's struggling, hey, why don't you come and be xenophobes with us? Because if we keep the Mexicans out, even though, of course, it's not just Mexicans, it's people from all over Central and South America. Certain Americans just consider everything Mexico below California. All of that's just Mexico all the way down. He's pointing out the class warfare, right? You set the blacks against the Mexican or the immigrants, right? Because then you get those guys fighting, and then it's less for us to do because they're doing our work for us as the white superior people who are trying to keep our positions of power and money. So again, really insightful from Joyner Lucas, picking up on that propaganda tactic used by people like Trump.
And I never lie, but I think there's a disconnect between your culture and mine. I worship the Einsteins, studied the Steve Jobs, but you ride Tupac's dick like he was a fucking god.
Oh, yeah. I love how white people always like to take credit for other people's work. Oh, yeah, I come from this culture of Steve Jobs and Einstein. Motherfucker, you ain't done shit. You're not Steve Jobs. You're not Einstein. You don't get to claim other people's work because you have the same skin color. And yet, How many white nationalists do this? Look at what our cultures have brought about. Not realizing, not acknowledging, they say, not acknowledging that they were standing on the shoulders of Arab giants who were translating works from the Greek into the Arab and preserving that knowledge. Or they were taking ideas from the Chinese brought over from Marco Polo and trade building on them. Oh, no, just the white guys. We did this all by ourselves. We didn't have any help. We stood on the shoulders of no one. It fell out of my penis. Because I'm a big old white man, and that's how knowledge is produced, with me, my magic stick. And it's that sense of ownership is a source of racial problems because you're taking credit for shit you haven't done and feeling superior to somebody else for shit you haven't done. And I think you need to call people out on that. When you're like, I'm coming from the culture of Einstein or Steve Jobs, like, are you Steve Jobs? Then you shut your mouth. Go do something like Steve Jobs, and then you can talk about it. Right.
Oh my God! And all you care about is rapping and stunting and being ratchet, and that's the nigga within you. Music rotting your brain and slowly start to convince you. Then you let your kids listen, and then the cycle continues. Blame it all on the menu, blame it on those drinks, blame it on everybody except for your own race. Blame it on white privileges, blame it on white kids, and just blame it on white citizens. Aim at the vice president. Bunch of class clowns. Niggas kneeling on the field, that's a flag down. How dare you try to make demands for this money? You gonna show us some respect. You gonna stand for this country, nigga.
That one hit me in the guts. That last line. I can't say it. But you're gonna stand for this country, and then the N-word. I can't think of a better way to sum up how Trump actually... That's a perfect summary of how Trump views the players, and a lot of people view the players. You're going to stand for it and do it, right? Not because, not out of, it's not about respecting them. It's about a sense of entitlement. Like, I can make you do this. I can tell you what to do. And that, it seeps into the whole notion of boy. And of course, you stereotypically associate the sort of racist ideas with the South, but it's not just the South, of course. But yeah, when I heard that line, it was a gut blow because it was so truthful. It was so truthful.
I'm not racist. I'm just prepared for this type of war. I heard Eminem's rap at the awards. Who's he fighting for? Y'all can take that motherfucker too. He ain't white no more. It's like you want to be so famous. You'll do anything for attention and a little payment. I can't take you nowhere without people pointing fingers. Pants hanging off your ass. You ain't got no home training. Put your fucking pants up, nigga. Put that suit back on. Take that do-rag off. Take that goat out your mouth.
All right. All about, again, demanding a certain type of blending with white culture. We saw, did you guys see on Twitter this week about the black wrestler who had his cornrows and down the sort of the back of his neck here, and the white referee looked at him and said, either you cut those off or you forfeit the game. And so standing there in the middle of the gymnasium with all the people there, the coach came over because he agreed. He's like, okay, if you're going to make me choose between my hair and competition, imagine being a high school kid and having to make that decision in the moment and deciding I'm willing to sacrifice and submit myself for the opportunity to compete. And that's what he did. Someone came over with scissors. They cut all his hair off right there in public. And then he wrestled and he won. But at what cost? You know what? That kind of demand was just, it's so humiliating, and it's such an arbitrary exercise of power. And it's that kind of, like, I see that as a representation of white oppression. And it's sort of mimicked or mentioned here. It's about regulating what you wear. If you wear a hoodie, somehow you deserve to be shot because you're a gangster. If your hair is, nappy and doesn't look white enough, you have to cover it up. You have to hide the fact that you have different hair. You have to look more white. You have to fit in. And regulating clothing, regulating that kind of stuff is an attempt to, sort of like paternalistically deal with the population instead of seeing an individual and showing them one-on-one respect. And there's a lot in these lyrics that Joyner Lucas has written, and I think this is why he got nominated for a Grammy this year, because people recognize that he should have been nominated for this song last year, and he was passed over because he was a black hip-hop artist. And he also did great work this year, but I think the acknowledgement and also the slight that he got for not being acknowledged for this incredibly piece of powerful political art is a shame on the Grammys, although I kind of tend to honestly agree with Eminem on the Grammys. But anyway, getting back to the song.
Quit the pitiful stuff, and then maybe police and stop killing you fucks. Yo, what the fuck? I'm not racist. It's like we're living in the same building but split into 2 floors. I'm not racist. But there's 2 sides to every story. I wish that I knew yours.
All right, so then we get the response. So he's wrapping it up. Obviously, he's saying quite a lot of massively racist things and giving the racist dude version of the world. Now we're gonna turn, and the other character, the black man, is gonna have his opportunity to respond. And you'll notice that in the classic sort of dialogue way, Joyner Lucas is going to set up everything that the white guy said in the first part, and he's going to now give a response sort of verse for verse. So everything that comes back is going to reflect where in the song the white guy brought up a point. So you'll see a lot of responses and contextualizations. I'll also say, because you might find it a little disturbing or like surprising, if you watch rap battles and whatever, battle rap, I find this surprising, but guys do knock each other's hats off. As long as you don't physically touch them, it seems to be, at least in the movies, I don't know how it is in real life, if you knock somebody's hat off or whatever, that's not considered an attack. At least, like I said, presented as it is on screen, because that's going to happen here, and I want you to be prepared for it. So now we're going to turn and hear the voice of the experience of the black man in response in his life.
I wish that I knew yours.
Look at that subtle, isn't that beautiful? That sort of subtle notion of division, just by taking the poles that are beams that are separating the room and putting it between the 2 men to sort of represent the divisions between them. Great visual, setup there.
I'm not racist. I swear. With all disrespect, I don't really like you white motherfuckers. That's just where I'm at. Screaming all lives matter is a protest to my protest. What kind of shit is that?
So, he doesn't start off, he's like, hey, I'm pretty pissed off with you people right now. And this isn't going to be about, it's about some honesty here. And taking up a position of feeling like I have a right to say something, as opposed to, explaining yourself. And putting forth a really robust presentation of his perspective. And calling out the idea that you're counter-protesting a protest to save lives. Amazingly put, the way that he phrased that with inside the rhyme. So,
and that's one war you'll never win. The power in the word nigga is a different sin. We shouldn't say it, but we do, and that's just what it is. But that don't mean that you can say it just because you got nigga friends. Nigga.
Right. Interesting way that he approaches this. I think it's I like this line, because I think within what Joyner Lucas is representing is probably a debate within the black community about the use of the word and its appropriateness, but also the fact that there is a clear line. That term can be used within the community that was victimized by it. And when white people say it, we're not part of that community. Now, maybe you've got a personal friendship with somebody you've built up over time, and you have language that you guys, you two, whatever, have worked out between you. But just in a general sense, there's a point that when white people say the word, even if they mean it well-intentioned, you can't read intentions. You don't know if that's really just someone being a racist, but you don't have to worry about a black person being racist. So anyway, I thought it was interesting that he brought up the question of whether people in the black community should be using it. But regardless of their discussions, white people, you just leave that word alone. Just leave it alone.
That word was originated for you to keep us under. And when we use it, we know that's just how we greet each other. And when you use it, we know there's a double meaning under. And even if I wasn't picking cotton physically, that don't mean I'm not infected by the history. My grandmama was a slave. That shit gets to me, and you ain't got no motherfucking sympathy, you pussy nigga.
Right? So when white people say slavery was 200 years ago, it wasn't that long ago. It ended in the 1800s, yes. But they're still like, that's not that long ago. And to go from being property to being completely broke and having to build yourself up from no assets, no credit history, nothing that you could use against, you know, the loan from the bank against, just all you have to sell is your labor, and trying to construct an entire, you know, like starting from that point, and not only starting from that point, because immigrants start from that point, right? If you think about people coming over from the States, white immigrants were actually better off, even if they came over broke, than black people who had been born and raised in America coming out of slavery. You know why? Because the white people were white. So even then, even when they were completely the same, being broke and having, you know, maybe no connections and no land and nothing, they were still white. That still gave them an advantage every single time. And we don't acknowledge that history.
I'm sorry, you can never feel my life. Trying to have faith, but I never feel alright. It's hard to elevate when this country's ran by whites, judging me by my skin color and my blackness. Trying to find a job, and ain't nobody call me back yet.
And we know from studies, if you put an African-sounding name on top of a resume and you put a white name on top of the exact same resume, the white name is going to get a call back more often than the black name. So when you have a country that's run by whites and you have conscious or unconscious biases, and then you tell people go get a job, and they're the least likely to get called back, you see how you're damning them for being victims of racism? You're blaming the people who are actually being discriminated against for not overcoming the discrimination of white people with power. Dude, that's messed up.
Now I gotta sell drugs and put food in my cabinet. You crackers ain't slick, this is all a part of your tactics. Don't talk about no motherfucking taxes when I ain't making no dough. You think you know everything, but you don't. You wanna copy our slang and everything that we know. Try to steal black culture and make it your own.
All right, so two things he talks about here. First is, the way that the system is set up, that if you can't get a job, what are you meant to do? If you have to bring in money, then people will turn to crime as an option rather than starving. If you're going to say, okay, we're not going to give you any benefits or any dignity, then you're going to move people from going from government subsidies until they do get a job, working in a market, again, working in a capitalist system that requires unemployment as a way to drive costs down, as a way to keep workers poor. If you're not going to provide that safety net, then people will go into a black market in order to put food on their table. And then what are you going to do? Judge them for feeding their families because people aren't calling them back for interviews, and the system was working against them. There's some really good points being brought up in this song. Very powerful.
Whoa, fuck, I'm exhausted. I can't even drive without the cops trying to start shit. I'm tired of this systematic racism bullshit. All you do is false shit. This the shit that I'm false with. And you don't know shit about my people. That's what bothers you. You don't know about no fried chicken or no barbecue. You don't know about the two-step or no loose change. You don't know about no 2 chains or no Kool-Aid. You don't know. And even though Barack was half as black, you hated President Obama. I know that's a fact. You couldn't wait to get him out and put a cracker back. And then you gave us Donald Trump, and that was payback for that.
I often refer to Obama as being black, and the fact is that he is biracial. And that gets overlooked a lot because we look at his skin tone and go, okay, black. But that's denying him half of his heritage, and it's not acknowledging that part of him. We're sort of putting him in one category. And defining him by that and othering him by that. And yes, there's just some good, nice bars from Jonah Lucas here on that point.
I'm not racist. I never lied, but I know there's a disconnect between your culture and mine. Yeah, I praise Tupac like he was a fucking god. He was fighting for his life way before he fucking died, nigga. Die, nigga. And all you care about is money and power and being ugly, and that's the cracker within you. Hey.
Whoa. Wow. Yeah, that was like an uppercut. All you care about is money and power, and that's a cracker within you. Because remember, there's a parallel here to what the white person said, right? I can't remember what his exact lines were, but he's like, blah, blah, and that's the N-word within you, right? So if you're going to talk about that core of the stereotype of the worst part of it, then he's speaking right back saying, look, you've got the exact same thing. This is me. This is the mirror I'm holding up to you. And that's the cracker in you. Like, bam, bam.
Hatred all in your brain and slowly start to convince you. Then you teach it to your children until the cycle continue. Blame it on Puerto Rico, blame it on OJ, blame it on everybody except for your own race. Blame it on black niggas and blame it on black citizens. Aim at the black businesses. I ain't saying I'm innocent, but I might be any day now. Treating everybody how you want in any way how. I swear North Korea about to bomb us any day now. And now I'm ducking every time I hear a fucking plane now.
So a little bit, that was a great bit. Just, again, running in, I'm stepping in for fair use purposes, because I really don't want this video to be taken down for copyright. And I think part of the reason that Jordan Lucas is bringing this in here is because in some ways the song is coming to a close now. And there's also this point of, even though we have divisions within our country, we also have common things that we worry about and things that we share. And those things we should acknowledge this as well. So it's just a little way of sort of like him, I think, maybe just throwing in some extra bars, but also looking at the bigger picture of Americans. Like, we're going to have to live together. So how are we going to do this? And there's the analogy of the house. And I think the guy said, we're living in the house, but we are living on different floors. And that analogy is going to come back again. So there is a nod to the divisions in society, but also an acknowledgement that, look, we're all in this together. At the end of the day, we're all Americans. So we're going to have to work this out. And we should work it out in a way that's fair. Getting back to it.
Shit. I make a lot of sense, but you just can't admit it. When Eminem went against Trump, that was the illest. Because even though he's white, he let us know he's standing with us. I'm not racist.
Can I just pause in on that? Because that to me is one of the things I find difficult, and probably what made me hesitant to give voice to my values. So in particular, I'm thinking, until maybe a couple of years ago, I didn't feel I had, I didn't feel qualified to talk about racial justice because I fell into the stupid trap of, well, as a white person, it's really not my place, yeah, la, 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 la. And the fact is that we have to, as white people, we are the solution. Just like when Patrick Stewart says that the solution to domestic violence against women lies primarily in the hands of men. Men are the ones who can lead on the solution of violence against women, and it's whites who can lead, who are best placed to lead on the issue of racial injustice in America. And yet we're also part of the group that is doing the oppression. That's precisely why we are best placed to do something about it, because we're within the power system already. So when he brings up Eminem and his cipher at the BET Awards, this was the most recent one about Donald Trump, Joyner Lucas saying, here's a white man who stood up and articulated our concerns, and we appreciated that. It gives me a role model of how to be an ally without appropriating the conversation for myself. It's a line that I'm learning to walk, but acknowledging that we should be speaking truth to power when we have privilege. As a white person, I have privilege in America, and there are white people who will listen to me talk about racial issues that won't listen to somebody based on their skin color if it's anything but white. So that gives me an opportunity to help transform society by harnessing that privilege. And that is our obligation, whatever our locations are. Because, black men in the community, they, there's still a lot of patriarchy stuff going on. They can help address those issues, and people who are in those nexus, even if you're, in other ways disadvantaged, there might be a way that you can use a form of, the group privilege, even if you don't personally benefit from it. And to not always see yourself as like, I don't have a role here, I don't have anything to contribute. Being an ally is an important thing in terms of social justice, because diversity across a population gives legitimacy to the points they're making. And so we can't expect black people to be oppressed and be the people to solve their own oppression without any assistance. If you care about racial justice, as I'm learning, and activating and speaking up more, it requires ownership from you as a white person to be an ally and stand behind, or when they ask, stand next to people who are leading on it, to let them know that you have their back and that they have your back, they have your support. So it's important.
I cry a lot. You don't know what it's like to be in a frying pot. You don't know what it's like to mind your business and get stopped by the cops, and I know if you about to die or not. You worry about your life, so you take mine. I love you, but I fucking hate you at the same time. I wish we could trade shoes or we could change lives so we can understand each other more, but that'll take time. I'm not racist. It's like we living in the same building but split into both sides. I'm not racist. But there's two sides to every story, and now you know mine.
I don't really know what to say to that bit other than I wanted to stop it because I didn't want the thing to be taken down. But obviously this is the part where Lucas is now pointing to the notion of dialogue is necessary. So we'll wrap it up because now we're near the end of the song. So
Can't erase the scars with a bandage. I'm hoping maybe we can come to an understanding. Agree to disagree, we can have an understanding. I'm not racist.
alright, and that's that video. So I don't know if you guys have seen it before or not. But it is, oh, I'm going to swap over here. I think an incredibly powerful piece of art. You can call it a song, you can call it a hip-hop song, but ultimately it's social critique and social commentary, and it's done in rhyme. It's done in hip-hop, and as I said, and not only am I floored by the content and the idea behind it and the voice he gives both characters, but that he does it all in rhyme and to a flow. It just, it's like, sort of, to me, it's like the difference between, you know, hopping along and figure skating, like just the ease with which you follow along the rhyming scheme and the patterns, and it's just so wonderfully worked out. So given that I didn't want to make Kevin Logan do all that on his own, I'll transition now to the fireplace view. I didn't want to make him sit through that. I thought I would do that on my own. And it looks like we're coming to the end of hour 2. God, I can talk for a long time. That's amazing. But yeah, I'm really enjoying this format, and once I figure out how to get Skype into OBS, then it should hopefully be a super fun time and having other guests on as well. I don't know how it's going to look from their end. I know that when people do stuff through Discord, there's no audio through the main system, and so they always have to like time. You know, I'm at minute 127. I don't know what we're going to do in terms of our show going forward, but at least on a regular basis, I think I like the Sunday show. I think I like hanging out for an hour or two with you guys. What I find is I can talk enough, so if people are willing to listen, maybe I'll get addicted to, or get enamored of the sound of my own voice and do a show once a week. Yeah. Alright, I am going to have to wrap it up now because I am running out of things to say. That's what I've prepared. If the feeling takes me in the next couple days, I might hop on and just babble at you guys a bit more. I find it's nicer to do for me in the mornings than in the evenings because I've got the light, which isn't much at the moment, but at least it's easier for me to light this situation, this scenario, than it is when it's 6 o'clock in the evening. I know it's more convenient for you guys in America for me to do a 6 o'clock in the evening show. However, for me, it's more convenient to use the natural light. Oh, and you want to see my Christmas light? Because I did put it on. Not only did I put on my Christmas light for the holidays, but I tried to center it. I noticed it was kind of crooked relative to my screen last time. So, yeah, I have my little purple, blue, and white Christmas lights on. And as I said, I'm going to be here for the holidays because I don't want to go anywhere, and I might just jump on. For those of you who are atheists or who are already bored of hanging out with your family, come by and check. There might be more content tomorrow morning when you stop in. Okay, I think we're gonna finish now. I hope you guys enjoyed the little fireplace and the ranting and the Joyner Lucas video, and all that's left to be said is that I have been Kristi. You guys have been absolutely awesome. I want to thank the chat. Oh, should we do it? Sorry, I do this all the time. I start doing the wrap up and then it was like, bye Kristi, bye, 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 bye. And then I go, oh, should we look at the chat? All right, does anybody want to, if you have any questions for me in the next couple of minutes, right, I can check the chat. I've seen the chat going around. I've been trying to approve some of the comments that I saw, but it's hard for me to moderate and talk and run OBS all at the same time. I see people are saying goodbye to me. I gotta say, I'm sorry, I keep faking you out. You have to know I'm a big liar head that I start to say goodbye and then I usually remember something. So I'll see if there's any questions. Thanks, Kristi. Hi, Bruce. I see you in the chat. Lonely Wolf 1980. Hello, how are you doing, mate? Oliver Forrester is there as well. Thanks you guys for stopping by. HK is there. And Jamie J. All right. Do I want an extra mod? Oh, I don't know you well enough, Jamie J. Normally, I have to kind of vet people a little bit, but if you get in good with the other mods, and you can get someone to vouch for you, I'll do it. So, bye, Kristi. Okay, bye, Twisted Hippie. I lied and said I was leaving. I'm almost leaving. And hi to Bruce. Again, hey, Brucey. Happy holidays. Good New Year. He's a patron. He's a lovely, lovely dude. Kansas Kane says, hey, Mirror, Mirror, what is your all-time favorite song? That's a hard one. I wish you would do genres. My all-time favorite song, it's difficult because it's affected by like what I'm listening to at the time. And so that is it's a really hard thing for me to come up with. Because there's classical music, there's jazz, there's rock, there's hip hop, which I'm discovering, there's, musicals. But if you're going to make me choose one right now, it would probably be the entire score of Hamilton. Okay. Oh, some random geek is a mod. All right. You know what? I can't I'm trying to make you a mod from my screen, Jamie J, and actually it's not an option I have on my tablet. I must have to be in the desktop version. So if you can get some random geek to vouch for you, then maybe we can get you set up for next time. All right, well, it seems that nobody has questions. That's fine, because I've been on air for almost 2 hours now, and that seems like a good reason to stop, because 2 hours is a nice amount of time, and I'm at 1 hour, 59 seconds, and 1 hour, 59 minutes, and 18 seconds. And I think that provides me just enough time to say that I have been Kristi. You guys, all of you, and you especially, you were awesome. You were absolutely awesome today. And I will talk to you guys again sometime in the very near future. Have a good evening or good day, and we'll see you soon. Thanks for stopping by, guys. Yes, stop streaming.